Hello, hello. It is the start of a new year. Here at the start of a new year, I've had a couple of friends of mine mention that they are going to start or restart journaling practice. Some of them have also mentioned that they want to start some creative journaling or some art journaling. I've posted 2 other YouTube videos so far, and both of them included standalone intuitive art or doodling exercises, and I did those as, or represented those as, really kind of standalone exercises, but they're definitely something that could be included in an art journal. So I figured this would be the perfect opportunity to introduce you to what art journaling is, because that is the thing that I stumbled upon here through YouTube that got me introduced to the whole world of creativity and art, something that I had never even contemplated, never really had an interest in, and now it really is a very, very large part of my life. And so I'd love to introduce you to the concept of art journaling. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Dara Herring, and if you've been dealing with high levels of stress or burnout, maybe health issues of your own or those that you care for, or maybe you've just been sort of struggling with toxic productivity and perfectionism, well, you may have stumbled upon the right place, because I have no magic wand to help you fix all of those things. However, I do have some techniques around creative play that may help you reduce your stress in your life and provide you with a sense of clarity to help you make better decisions as you navigate through either a toxic work environment or maybe just the stress of day-to-day life. I certainly know that it has helped me. Here on this channel, I invite you to give your brain a break. Join me in some intuitive art play, and the hope is to get you back to that place of what it felt like when we were kids and you would get a brand new box of crayons back before self-judgment was really a thing. And along the way, you can join me. I'm a relatively new mixed media artist as I explore learning about other artists, new mediums, learning about new cultures, and lots of side quests along the way with my adult ADHD always riding shotgun. So, art journaling isn't a single thing. I think the best way to think about it is as a visual diary. And even that's a misnomer, because diary makes you think of something that you're writing in every day or regularly. And it doesn't have to be that way. Let me just show you an example of what I consider an art journal to be. So I started out with a little notebook, just like this, cheap paper, cheap craft cover, thin, no lines, nothing. I went from that to this, which was a watercolor exercise of some, sort of abstract flowers that I created. I edged the whole thing in some washi tape, which is like a Japanese low tack tape that comes in lots of different designs. I kind of edged that there. And inside was just an exercise very often in journaling my thoughts, feelings, including, little collage pieces created by other people, printing things out on, sheer, I forget what you call this kind of plastic paper, as like sort of tip-ins, just to kind of make the words underneath look a little more interesting. But it's a visual representative of your thoughts, your feelings, your dreams, your goals. It can be a memory keeper, so almost like a scrapbook with photos, ticket stubs, things that you collect in your maybe travels, postcards, things like that. It can also be drawings or paintings if you do have an artistic bent. It could simply be a wash of watercolor on a page with maybe some collage pieces, glued in, and your journaling written on the page. You could use it as a gratitude journal. You could track whatever it is that you're tracking for your resolutions in the new year. You could do that there. You could also use this as a way to decorate your planner. So maybe your planner actually becomes your art journal. or it could be just a place where you collage different elements that you find in newspapers or magazines. Your art journal could simply be page to page doodles, all in black and white, or with a splash of color here or there. It's a place for you to flex your creative muscle. I like to think of it as a place to try out different media. You can figure out what you like in terms of techniques, materials, colors, color combinations. So the challenge is getting started with an art journal, finding out what materials work best for you, and then giving it a try. There is no right and there's no wrong. And the best thing about it is because it's a book and it closes, it is yours and it can be as private as you want it to be. So I'm going to share with you the basics of getting started, the materials that you need, things I think you should consider as you look to purchase those materials. So of course, let's get started with the journal itself. So the first thing you want to think about is, how do you anticipate using your journal? Are you thinking that you're going to be writing primarily, or do you want to try your hands at watercolor or using some other watercolor medium? So those are some of the things that I'd have in mind, even as I start to walk you through this pile of options that comes from my endless supply of sketchbooks and journals. I should not be allowed to buy another one, but the one that I'm showing you here, I've showed earlier in the video. This is one of my favorites because it's really inexpensive, and I do think that it's a great start, low commitment. You can buy them in a multitude of places. I'll include links for those things that I think it's worthwhile you looking into in the description box below. But you can see here how thin this starts out and then how chunky it can get. I love the fact that these types of notebooks generally can hold a lot to them, and although inexpensive, the paper quality is actually quite decent even for water soluble materials. It's thin, it's light, but it can take a lot in terms of water, in terms of collage. And the one thing that you'll notice is that the one that I'm showing you here and the others that I'll show as well, they're actually stitched as opposed to stapled. So that gives them some additional strength as well for what is a relatively inexpensive notebook, so that if you are using water-soluble materials, as the binding gets wet, it's not going to fall apart if it were glued, or even kind of weakened if it was just stapled. So you'll find these in different colors, different paper thickness, rounded edges, squared edges, a variety of different things. The one thing I may suggest is that you don't want to buy like a bulk order of like 24. You'll find them cheap like that. But when you're not quite sure if that's the perfect for you, you may want to avoid large orders. Now, this looks very similar to the last three that I just showed you, but it's by a specific brand called Midori. It's the Midori MD notebook, and it comes in these usual thick notebook types. It's multitude of pages, and then this thinner type, which is their light, L-I-G-H-T. I like it for the same reason as the others. It's thin, it's light. This one does have staples, but it to me outperforms even the previous ones that are stitched. The price point is slightly higher. I'd say for a pack of 3, this might be about $16. For the others, you can find, a pack of 5 for like $9. You can even find a pack of 12 for like 10 or 12 bucks. But I really like the Midori paper. I like how it performs with watercolors. It's one of my favorites. So the chunkier one is one you can go with. It just will get extra chunky if you're collaging. Now, this little red sketchbook is super cute. It's like 8 by 8 inches, under $15. It's great size if you're looking for something smaller. So I didn't mention the other ones are an A5 notebook size. That's about like what you typically see in like a stationery store for like a notebook. But this one's 8x8. It's fabric. It has a hard cover, unlike the previous one. So if you're not into decorating the cover and you want something sturdier in the fabric, this is a good option. This is not my favorite, however. I went online and it looks like the brand has actually changed the name from sketchbook to something like drawing book, because that's really what it is. It does not handle any type of water-based material. It does have a nice little pocket in the back. I thought I'd point that out because that might be something you'll be looking for in your own book, even if it is not this one. Now, this one, she fancy. This is a watercolor sketchbook. The brand is Etcher, Etcher Lab, and like the previous one, this one has an elastic to kind of hold it all together. But this is watercolor paper. So this is something you might want to consider if you really want to dive deep into watercolor and learning about it. This has 100% cotton paper, which is not a necessity if you are starting out with watercolor, but cotton paper really is sort of the piece de resistance when it comes to watercolor. This one has a cloth cover, a fabric cover that is made for customizing with either paint or markers. You can find that in other brands that are less expensive. This is a landscape, so I thought it was nice to show you that you can get your books in different formats. That gives you a wider format, and that watercolor paper comes in both a rougher texture, which is cold press, and then hot press. This is a mixed media sketchbook. This is one of my favorites. This one is by Stillman & Byrne, but there are many different brands. It's a mixed media paper, and it's sort of a cross between like a regular sketchbook drawing paper and a watercolor paper. You can use both wet and dry materials on it. You can get all different kinds of sizes, colors for the exterior, soft bound, hard bound, spiral, different types of sizes, and different paper colors. So that is a multimedia sketchbook. This is to show you another option. I personally prefer bound sketchbooks, but this is a nice option if you're thinking about journaling in a way where you might want to remove some of the pages. This is a spiral bound sketchbook that you could use as a journal. The paper is smooth, so that's really good if you think that you'll want to do a lot of writing, so that gives you some options. The paper isn't as flexible to use as traditional multimedia paper. It's great for collage because it's a little heavy, great for drawing. Takes water-based materials, all right. You can do it, but it doesn't have the right kind of like absorbent texture as watercolor paper, but it's a great option, and the pages are perforated. Okay, and you may think I'm crazy for showing you a magazine, but there are people, and I've never done it, but certainly I'm game to try if anybody's interested in seeing me do it, in using and repurposing a magazine or like an old book as an art journal. So with this, where the pages are shiny, what you would have to do is, depending on your style, you may want to prep the pages with like a cheap craft acrylic paint. The one that I showed, you can often get those from a craft supply store for about 85 cents, even cheaper sometimes if they're on sale. They're great because they're matte and they're opaque, so they can cover the background. But in some cases you might want to do that. Like you might want to keep this image like I'm pointing out here and journal around it. You might want to keep some of the words that are on the page and work that into your design, or you could cover up a lot of that and just journal on top. So that is an option that I wanted to point out. And then the last thing, which I'm thinking about doing, again, let's not spend a lot of money. Let's repurpose where we can. This is my planner from last year. So I'm thinking about turning this into an art journal. There's probably all different kinds of ways I can repurpose this. Again, I can cover some of the pages with acrylic paint, or gesso, which is a medium that you often use to prime canvases or paper for acrylic paint, or I could just collage through it. So we'll see what's possible, but I just wanted to throw out to you the fact that you have options and you don't always have to spend a lot of money. Hey, now it's time to get to the fun stuff, art supplies. My suggestion, if you are just starting out, is to beg, borrow, and steal supplies rather than going and making a big investment until you have a sense of what you'd be interested in moving forward. But we're talking art journaling, so the first thing is the journaling part. You need a pen. You know, that's really simple. You can go as straightforward as a good Bic pen, fine liner. You can go with different colors. You can even try a fountain pen. The only thing I would suggest is to think about whether or not you plan to apply any kind of water-based material on top of your writing, in which case you just want to make sure that you have either water-resistant or waterproof ink. Next up, pencils. You can consider pencils. Certainly you don't have to, but if you want to try your hand at drawing, that might be something you're interested in. Whether it's a regular old pencil, a colored pencil that is erasable, or maybe one that is water soluble, like watercolor pencils, you have a lot of options. Next up is markers. Certainly you can go with good old Crayolas or any other kind of water-based marker. They're actually great because you can apply water to them with a brush and you can use them as a starting kind of watercolor almost. The one thing you may want to consider is a white marker, whether it's acrylic or maybe even a China marker. White can be really interesting when applied over especially darker colors, just with doodling. It gives a really good effect. Okay, next up for consideration is watercolor, something that many folks are interested in. I'm showing you here kind of my everyday palette as an example of what you would typically see in a watercolor set. This is sort of above the basic, really dry, flat, round pans that you'll find in like a Michaels, maybe for like $5 US. You might want to avoid those. They tend to be really, really chalky and like smear on your hand after you use them. But there are a lot of really good watercolor options that are now available. Even this one I'm showing here with the colors that spin out. This is more ink than watercolor, but I find them to be just fine. I bought them in bulk for a class I was leading, and as you can see, I've actually used it myself. So this is a great start. It actually comes with a water pen. So I'm going to link to a number of different options for watercolor palettes in the description box at different price points, and that might be a good way for you to get started if that's something you're interested in. Okay, this next option may seem oddly specific, but I thought I would share it with you because it is an interesting option as I struggle with opening this up here. These are watercolor crayons, referred to often as watercolor pastels. There are a couple of similar options on the market, but these are interesting because they work just like regular crayons that we grew up with, but they're water soluble. So once you apply water to them, they work like watercolor. I'll include a link to them along with a link to a less expensive option made by the same company in just a smaller format that I wish I had known was available originally. Okay, and this next option is just fun, so I had to include them. These are tempera paint, like the good old tempera paint we used to use in elementary school. They're just in a solid form in a stick, so they're easy to transport. They're very clean. You don't have to worry about getting messy. Now, they're not water soluble, and you can't mix them, but they're interesting in that they can be layered on top of each other, so you can create kind of a quote-unquote mixture in the layering of them, and they're not badly priced because they are a kid's art supply, so that might be something you want to look into. And then last but not least, you have acrylic paint. There are many different kinds on the market, but I would suggest that if you're just getting started, you could go with a craft paint. I mentioned these earlier. They come in many different colors, both regular colors as well as metallics. And I would suggest you might want to start with the matte format because they will prevent your pages from sticking together. Okay. That's it. We've covered the basics of art journaling, what it is, and the supplies you would need to get started. In future videos, I'm going to work through some ideas with you where we can journal together. But in the meantime, you can get started with one of my other 2 videos, like the one that I'm showing here, for example, and you can do several of these types of neurographic doodles. This is a great way for you to kind of loosen up, break up the whiteness of your journal as you're getting started. And shortly, and I'm not sure if it's the next video or the one after that, I'll have some exercises to help you further get warmed up and get comfortable with the idea of art journaling and help you figure out what your routine is going to be as you fit this new cozy hobby into your life. So until next time, be sure to like the video and subscribe.